The H1B guy here, and tonight I'm very proud to introduce and welcome you to the very first episode of the H1B Guy and Friends Live. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and like this video so that I can continue to produce more content like this for you. I also wanted to mention the H1B Guy offers a variety of consulting services. I help businesses and individuals solve complex work authorization issues in the recruitment process while bringing awareness to employment-based immigration benefits. Tonight's stream is brought to you by RecruiterNetworks.com, the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001. And as I've said earlier, I am just beyond thrilled to bring to you the H1B Guy and Friends Live, Episode 1. This plan for this monthly series will be on the last Wednesday of the month at 9 p.m. Eastern going forward. I had this crazy idea a few months ago to do a panel show with my friends where we talk about 3 or 4 of the most current U.S. immigration issues in 30 minutes. So after a lot of persuasion, I now get to introduce to you 4 gentlemen that I'm proud to call my friend. Again, going forward, as I said, we're going to do the last Wednesday of the month at 9 p.m., and we're going to have a rotation of some new and familiar faces on. I did want to say that any opinions that are shared here tonight are for educational and entertainment purposes only. So without any further ado, I'd love to introduce to you Maddie. You might recognize Maddie. He was brave enough to come on the first Stamp It Out Q&A, if you remember way back when. Maddie, how you doing tonight?
Good. How about yourself, Robert?
I'm very good, Maddie, and I just appreciate you being brave enough to come back on. Anytime I ask you for something, you always say yes, and I will tell you those are the best kind of friends for people like me to have. So thank you so much for coming on. Dr. Oscar, as you may recognize from the Stamp It Out Q&A 5, Dr. O, how you doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Thank you so much for the invitation. This is awesome.
Just so glad to have you on, and man, loving the setup. The new mic looks awesome. I am really jealous of that.
Oh, no. That's right.
Richard Allman, as you may recognize from RecruiterNetworks.com and also from the H1B Guy Presents. Full disclosure, I asked Richard to come on tonight's panel because I wanted to make sure we have unique voices contributing to the discussion, not just because he's a sponsor of the channel. Richard, how you doing?
Fantastic. I'm happy to be here with such a great group. Thank you.
Richard, thank you so much. Just really appreciate your sponsorship and most of all your participation tonight. So, and last but not least, I want to introduce to you Vivek Soni. While this is Vivek's first time here on this channel, Vivek and I befriended each other due to the ongoing Documented Dreamers advocacy that's out there and currently going on. I believe that you're going to find Vivek's opinions intelligent and thoughtful. Vivek, welcome, and how are you doing?
Doing good after a hectic day. Thank you, and giving the opportunity to talk here with the esteemed panel here with you, Robert.
Well,
thank you.
Vivek, I just really appreciate your willingness to jump in. It just means so much to me, and I just really thank you for that. So as a lot of you know, crossed over 1,000 subscribers here in the last week. So that gives me an opportunity to turn on super chats here on these live streams. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you for your support. So if time permits, we will take a question from a super chat. And again, that's only if time permits because we've got a lot to talk about here tonight. But I wanted to start off this episode with some really breaking news, and that is the H1B Guy podcast is now official. The first episode in what will be an ongoing series titled Immigration Bites, and that's BITES, which will air exclusively on the podcast, should be out in the next few days. So please subscribe to that podcast on Anchor, and that's anchor.fm/the H1B Guy. And if you haven't already, please like this video. And guys, let's get started. Okay, so the first question of the night that I have is this. we are 1 week removed from President Biden's inauguration, where on a day one plan, he led with the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2020 as part of his immigration reform. Reports are that Senator Menendez, a Democrat from New Jersey, who is the sponsor of the bill, will introduce the bill in 3 weeks, and his goal is to get it passed in 2021 to avoid it carrying over into an election year. So my question is this: what kind of timeline do you think we're realistically looking at here with hashtag USCA21? Maddie, I'm going to go right to you here on this and just pull you up and let you jump in. What do you think?
It's an interesting proposition. When they say it's a comprehensive immigration reform, timelines are always going to be stretched. So I am thinking somewhere around last week of Jan or first week of Feb, somewhere around that timeline. And we already heard from some people that the sessions have been pushed further. So I think probably somewhere around Jan, Feb, somewhere there.
Awesome. Anybody else got any thoughts on a timeline?
Robert, what I'm thinking is immigration bill is as complex as the Affordable Care Act, which was introduced in 2008, right? So I'm expecting around 2.5 years for this bill to actually become law, if everything works in the favor of it.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because if you go back and look at, the 2013, which is what this is sort of being mirrored after, that was a pretty lengthy process as well. And then you look at, to go back, not to rehash it, but you look at S386 and the timeline around that, and you're talking 2019 until the end of 2020. So yeah, I mean, I think you could easily draw that conclusion. Richard, what do you think?
I think it's going to be a little more deeper and complicated with what's going on Capitol Hill now. They have to take into account a lot of circumstances that are being evolving day by day with the past presidency, all of the charges. You've got Republicans and Democrats that are going to have to play a lot of horse trading. And I truly believe that even though we may not see it or hear about it, that a lot of those issues are going to be quietly discussed, and those are going to greatly affect how quickly and how fully this legislation can get by everybody and get voted on to be enacted.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the scope of what they're talking about and just how large it is, I mean, to think it's going to move quickly, I think would be, lying to yourself. Oscar, what do you think?
2 years.
Wow.
Like everything in the government just takes 2 years too late. Like it happened with the cannabis legislation. I use the same analogy. Let's say, like for example, Michigan opened up cannabis, like recreational cannabis, about a year change. So now what we're waiting is 2 years into getting actually the real regulations and getting them into it. It's gonna be exactly the same thing with immigration. This is gonna take just a few years. Unfortunately, that's just what I think. I hope not, but yeah.
Well, and I think, what's interesting about that is when you look at a lot of the hurry up and wait that's happened, you go back and the timelines to push this forward, and there was a lot of rumors circulating, but then, Monday before the inauguration, all of a sudden the rumors started coming up that this big, huge, comprehensive Emmy bill was coming. And I think, I had alluded to my predictions were, June or July. And so again, I mean, I think if we look at the time frame between it's introduced and what we're saying, I mean, it sounds to me like really, I'd say somewhere between May and the end of next year. So that leads me to the next question, which is, let's go a little bit further into what Maddie had alluded to, which is this being a comprehensive immigration reform piece of legislation versus a standalone singular issue bill like the Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act. What do you guys think the pros and the cons of this comprehensive immigration reform approach are going to be?
Well, it's going to be complex when we say comprehensive immigration reform. The kitchen sink, literal kitchen sink, would be thrown into it. So what I feel is with an evenly, divided Senate, it's going to be harder for comprehensive immigration reform to gather or garner enough bipartisan support. Having said that, there are certain pieces of legislation which have, thus far, been passed in either Senate or houses, or both the Senate and the House, and not been reconciled. So we can, what I feel is the best thing to do is to, take bits and pieces from there and then start off. Like, for example, the Durbin-Lee amendment on S386. I think it's a very good place to start when it comes to, documented immigration reform.
Well, I mean, well, there's a lot. There's a lot in stake here, right? Like you said, it's a big laundry list of things that have to happen. I think what's going to happen is that the government is going to look first at the illegal immigrants. Unfortunately, that's their first thing on the agenda, and the rest of the pack, the people that actually pay, are not a priority. But I think that's really what they're going to look at, especially with the Dreamers. That's what I think. That's their first angle here. I don't see it happening elsewhere.
It's interesting when you look at what the Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act actually became. I mean, what HR 1044 and S386 morphed into, right? Because you had a lot of these, it was a UC play. And so because it was a UC play, you had some amendments with some folks, Senator David Perdue, who's no longer in the Senate, here from, my great state of Georgia, who had an amendment, and that was around some of the health care. So I think when you look at comprehensive and what that means, it's got to take not only the legal, but the illegal approach, which I think that there's enough to go around for everybody. I think, but I could be wrong on that. Vivek, Richard, you have any thoughts on this?
Well, from my end, there are so many different undercurrents from so many different party and leaders and influential people that it's I think it's very difficult to understand the proper outcome and timing at this point. I think it's going to be a battle. I think the Democrats are going to be able to do much more to reverse a lot of the bad rules and regulations that have been passed. Some of which were just obviously executive orders. They're going to reverse a lot of those things, but I think in a comprehensive plan, I think they really want to do something that's going to make it a signal to the rest of the world that we are back to our roots. We're here to welcome people that are the right.
Uh-oh, did he freeze? I'm going to pull you up, Vivek.
Yeah, so I have a perspective to this. So in the last, since the coronavirus came into the country, right, we lost 400,000 lives. And what it kind of depicts about the country is there's something broken, right? We were not able to support or kind of save those lives, right? And what I'm hearing is a lot of DACA recipients have been part of the essential workforce, right? So they are kind of one of the important segment which has to be included in the Dream Act or the new immigration law, right? Along with the legal, what's the documented dreamers here, right? So I think the best scenario would be to have everybody inside it, but it creates its own complexities, own delays, kind of push and pull. So there'll not be I think that would be the ideal way. But if that is not going to work out, breaking apart into smaller bills would have been more effective rather not comprehensive.
Yeah, and I think that that's the question that, is the to be determined here in all of this, and that is, do you break it out piece by piece? Are there some of these that they could possibly be executive actions or executive orders? So there's a lot of questions. I think right now, and this is my 2 cents, and everything right now is speculation. We've seen a fact sheet. We've seen some mentions of what are going to be on. And so this is one of those where I say, listen, until we see the fine print and I can dissect the language, right, personally, and everyone can with your own eyes, then that's where it comes down to waiting. And unfortunately, there's a lot of waiting in the employment-based immigration game. It just is how it is. And it's unfortunate, but that's part of the battle. And that's why we have these shows to talk about these issues, is because they are ongoing. And so I just wanted to ask everyone who's out there, if you're currently watching this live, would ask you to please like this video. Really helps with the YouTube algorithm and promoting content that I do in live streams like this in the future. I also would ask you, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. And again, if you have a question that you'd like us to address, please use that super chat function, and we'll try to get to it here at the end of the stream. Unfortunately, Richard had frozen. He's trying to get back in, and I'll bring him up when he comes back in. But we're going to move on to the next question. And so I've been getting a lot of folks reaching out to me on Twitter here recently. Really started kind of the mid-end of last week. And I had covered this in the H1B Guy News a couple of weeks ago, and that's these massive delays in processing, not only just for the H4 EADs, but more recently F1 OPT EADs, and specifically at USCIS processing centers in Lewisville, Texas, and Phoenix, Arizona. I know of a few H4 EADs that were filed in February that are still pending, and there are many other examples, but the F1 OPT delays are piling up, and the unfortunate repercussion that's created this has really been part of the perfect storm that was created from all of the I-45 adjustment of statuses filings that happened in October and November. And so there are several reports out there where receipt notices haven't even been issued, nor have the filing fee checks been cashed on F1 cases from October. And data that's showing USCIS received about half of what they received in the same time frame in the previous year. So I'm talking about they've received half the cases in October, November, December. What do you guys think about these delays for individuals that are currently here in this country that are going through this? These are F1s that are graduating, waiting on their employment authorization document so that they can maintain their status and begin working. Anybody want to start off? Anybody have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll throw some heat here. Well, number one, what we have seen, and this is what I hear from attorneys, people that I know that are in that situation, is that the USCIS is using third parties to process these cases. These are people that are not fully trained to basically just do these cases and approve them and get them through the system. So I think this is one of the reasons why. I don't know if this had to deal with the layoffs that happened or the furloughs that the government may have done earlier in the year because of the COVID situation. That could have been, but that is one of the root causes that I can already presume. And just again, I'm taking opinions that I've heard around that this is what's happening. We had a recent case where we did an F1 change, okay, through a friend and whatnot, and that. So they sent a notice for biometrics when those biometrics had been done. And they said, well, we can't accept this. And I'm like, well, if you already have the biometrics, well, now we need the fees. So basically all those fees were paid. And 2 weeks after, there was finally the final approval. again, it's ludicrous what's going on inside the whole organization there. I mean, I don't know if these people are talking to each other or they just have no communication between offices and branches. But this is one of the root causes, and I'm very, very sure this is why. And now, like you said, is a perfect storm with all the 485 cases, the OPT cases staggering up. Who is processing these? There's probably not enough people, and the people that are there are not well trained. That's what I think.
And I know, Maddie, you went through F1 status and, OPT EAD status. And, I guess if you could go back and having, let's say you filed in October and you're waiting and waiting and you're graduating in May. I mean, talk about that anxiety and stress that can possibly create for you individually.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I was not in that situation. My spouse was. When it was a depressing time, to be honest. We were still, courting each other, and it was a long distance relationship. The kind of stress that she used to, go through, in having to, repay back the student loan and, just look for another job, maintain the status, and at the same point of time, go about lifestyle. We are talking about, 2008, 2009-ish, where it was the peak of the, recession. And, she went through hell for a year and a half. She couldn't land a job. And, it actually plays an important part where there are long-term repercussions in going through such a situation, where I still see, my spouse always, anxious about the situation, the visa situation. She always wants to, get to the, as and when a renewal happens, she wants to fly to India and then get a stamping as quick as possible. Imagine she flew to India in March and then, just came back the day before the lockdown started. So I was like literally, feeling very anxious with a 4-year-old kid to look after, and the kind of stress that it adds to. I mean, be it anybody, be it an unmarried person, a single, or any person, like, especially students who are more vulnerable financially, and in terms of the emotions that they go through, and in terms of having a stable life in a different country. It's I can relate to it. I feel sorry for them. At the same point of time, we got to continue this struggle. We have to speak to the right people, send out the right messaging, and then urge the new administration to take a different position, and then help us as soon as possible. So that's about what I could say to the situation.
Yeah, and I apologize. I knew your wife went through the F1, process, and I thought you did too. So apologies on that. But I think the interesting point that you talked about is the time, that time. And I think that right now that's what a lot of we're talking about when we talk about the F1 OPTs. When we even to pull back the documented dreamer conversation back into this, they're working against time. And so I think that the faster that the process happens for OPT EAD specifically, these are kids that are graduating from advanced US institutions for the most part, masters, and individual that I've been working with, PhD in economics, very intelligent individual. And that individual cannot work until he has his card in hand. And that's the big thing, is that until you have not only the approval, you've got to have the plastic. And if you don't have the plastic, you can't work. And so you can submit resumes all you want and you can look for jobs all you want, but until you have that work authorization, you can't work. So, Vivek, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Not much, Robert. The thing is, I was so if a child who has stayed here in US, right, he graduates, right, and he does not get his OPT card, what options he has at that point of time? That is a big question. would he have to go back to his country of birth, or he has other options? I have no clear idea about that one.
Yeah, and that's something that we talked about last Thursday in the Documented Dreamer series live, specifically with Vishal, who, as a Vishal, you're talking about getting a degree in cybersecurity, master's degree in cybersecurity. And this is an individual who'd been here 10 years, bachelor's at Illinois Institute of Technology, master's in cybersecurity. When Vishal graduates, there's no reason that Vishal should not have W-2 work authorization and continued W-2 work authorization. His parents have an approved I-140. It's not right. And what it does is it creates a cycle that's really unnecessary. And you guys know I'm a proponent of the H-1B visa. I think that it fills necessary gaps. But there's no reason to intentionally put kids who have been in this country for as long as they have into the cycle. And even if they are foreign national students who come here, who are graduating with a PhD, to delay and not cash their checks, we're talking about the end of October. It's just not right. And so, I'm glad it was brought to my attention, because what it's doing is it's reducing the workforce, intentional or not. And because they got to have that card in hand. So the longer that they don't process the case, the workforce, the human capital war that I talk about a lot on this channel, we lose because of processing times. So I wanted to move on to the last point, and this was the big news of the week. And Oscar, I know you wanted to talk about this, and so I want to close with the new travel ban that went into play yesterday. President Biden, again, has increased this travel ban amidst the identification of a new COVID-19 variants. Personally, to me, it feels like a no-win situation here for President Biden, but it's starting to become very apparent to me that your vaccine card is going to be the key to global travel for U.S. citizens and immigrants alike in the future. And I had Dr. Raj on before Christmas. We talked about the vaccine at length, the technology behind it. But what do you guys think? It just feels like to me, return to normal for our global society is going to be our vaccine cards. Anybody want to lead off with this? Oscar?
Go ahead, Robert, because Robert wants to talk on this.
Oh,
I'll
here,
finish
Richard,
it
I
up.
got you. Go ahead.
Well, as you know, I have some involvement with the technology and biotech industry that's working on this, so I have a little bit of insight to this. Um, there is going to be a seismic change in how things are done, not just on immigration, but on travel, on working, on going even to public events. There's going to be a lot of new rules and regulations that are not going to be just U.S., they're going to be worldwide. And many of these countries are going to have to get together, because you can't have one country with one set of standards and other countries with different standards, because you're going to eventually, have a crashing of the ability to do business, do travel, do everything else, as well as healthcare standards included, which obviously are the foundation of this. So I think what we're seeing now is the company that I'm involved with is working nationally and internationally to come up with standards. In other words, if somebody has a test result, nobody's going to know if that test result is real, if it's validated, if it's a test that's 70% efficient or 90% efficient or whatever the case may be. So there needs to be standards, not just in the testing, but in the documentation and the sharing of documentation. So it's a whole new industry, not just the inoculations and the testing, but the availability of sharing the information with standards. So I think that we're in kind of like a the twilight zone here. Everybody's trying to figure out where we are, how we're going to survive this, but everybody agrees it's got to be done, because otherwise we're going to have lockdown for 20 years. We're going to have 5 million people dying every year. This has to be addressed, and it is being done, but I don't think it's yet figured out completely, and certainly it's not been publicized yet.
Mm. Anybody else? Oscar, Maddie, Vivek?
Who wants to? I'll go. I'll go. Fine.
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
go ahead and speak. I agree with what Richard was saying. Sorry, I was calling you Robert.
Too many R's, man.
Too many R's. But yeah, I do agree. I mean, I'm a scientist myself, so I do have insights as well of what's going on. This is unfortunately, I don't agree with the ban. I think what I did agree was, okay, well, let's have some travel with testing, make sure the testing is valid and whatnot. I mean, of course, there's restrictions that have to be, quarantine, stay home, and blah, blah, blah. It's a tough situation, especially, people that want to reunite with families and stuff like that are abroad, and that sucks. I mean, that's a bad feeling. Business wise, I think we're figuring it out. But yeah, we're all heading to that COVID card that say, hey, we've been vaccinated, so we can move around the world. And I'm actually happy that there's going to be some standardization around this, because we do this in chemistry all the time when we come up with methods and all that stuff. And so if there is going to be some regulars or some guidelines that countries will have to do, like there's some minimum guidelines, that's going to help out. It's just we got to get back to normal. Although,
yeah, I mean, I think the QR code for the Apple Watch, right? I mean, or whatever that is kind of where this is going, or the QR code on your phone. You go to travel internationally, and you have to produce the QR code. If not, it's going to come down to a series of negative tests that you're going to have to produce. And listen, I've talked about the current society right now. We have morphed very rapidly into this digital borderless society, and us continuing to ban travel while it's necessary in the interim, it cannot continue for the foreseeable future if we want to continue to thrive, survive, and innovate. So I don't know, Maddie, Vivek, did you guys have anything you wanted to add on that?
I just wanted to, bring up a point, on the other side, where, we've seen banks could have helped, was on the onset of the, pandemic itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen for whatever reason. And that's a bygone era now. But at the same point of time, if it is targeted for a limited point of time, we could actually support that. But from the looks of it, it doesn't look like that. It looks
Mm-hmm.
like they're just gonna put on the fences, and they're not gonna allow the people to come in and move out freely, and not having a plan in sight as to when to revert the ban. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where it's bringing us to this situation, and lots of questions around as to what's going to happen next. And people, we have to bank on the administration to probably up their game on this, and then have a clear messaging on this aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree 100%. So, Vivek, did you go ahead, Richard?
I was going to interject there. He's absolutely right with the administration. However, the administration inherited, if I said a disaster, I would be making it sound better than it is. They inherited such ridiculousness that they didn't even know what they had. They were relying on somebody saying, hey, we're giving you a system that's not great, but it works, and here's what it's capable of doing. And none of that turned out to be accurate. So they're
Mm-hmm.
now trying figure out what did the past administration do? What are their capabilities? What are their problems? What's their ability to produce, to distribute, to buy?
Mm-hmm.
They, as we all know, they said, well, we're holding half of the vaccines back in reserve. And that was completely untrue. And they found out there was nothing there. They also
Mm-hmm.
found out that, things were not being done because they wanted to let state by state handle it. And as everybody knows, if there's no consistency, there's no expectation of a consistent outcome. And they're finding it out now. So I don't blame these guys. They inherited a rat's nest of craziness, and they got to figure it out really quickly. But I do believe they have the intent on doing it honestly, and as they find out things, to communicate accurately. So
Mm-hmm.
let's see how that works.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that we've got a lot to look forward to. There was so several comments in the chat, about the comprehensive reform versus standalone. A lot of questions around that. The fact that it is a very large bill, I think, is concerning for a lot. There's some folks wanting to know why perm processing is taking so long. Well, again, I mean, third-party contractors, government bureaucrats. I mean, it just, there's a lot of reasons for that. But there is one question that came in, and it's going to give me a good opportunity to promote the podcast. So I have some folks asking, can I please to discuss the lottery for fiscal year 2022? So there's a lot of confusion on it. I haven't seen anything official, but I'm going to put out an immigration bites on it, and I'm going to cover it in the H1B Guy News on Friday. So Madhu, I look for something more from me on that. And I do want to close this out by just to say, listen, you can follow Maddie at Mad and Witty, so MADNWITTY on Twitter. Dr. Oscar, you can follow him at Dr. Dr. Oscar C. Or you can find him on LinkedIn at Cabrices. That's CABRICES. Of course, Richard, you can follow him connect with him on LinkedIn, Richard-B-Allman. And of course, recruiternetworks.com. If you haven't already, please go create a user profile on recruiternetworks.com. And Vivek is also on LinkedIn. I think that's Sony, SONI Vivek on LinkedIn. And so, guys, if you're going to ask you, please follow my friends here. I can't do a show like this without them. And so I just wanted to remind everyone that today's live stream was brought to you by RecruiterNetworks.com, the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001. This national job board network provides recruitment websites in 1,024 major U.S. metro areas. Each local job board is its own portal and is a low-cost resource for immigration recruitment ads for all industries and professions with a flat price of $225 per ad, regardless of which city you choose. RecruiterNetworks.com has been the #1 place for immigration attorneys, immigration ad agencies, and employers to meet the DOL requirements for the digital portion of the perm advertisement rules. RecruiterNetworks.com. Tell them the H1B guy sent you. And by the way, they've got a newly revamped website, so if you would check that out, I know Richard would really appreciate it, and it looks great. It got a great facelift. Richard's got a lot of great things that he's working on. I'm just so excited to be partnered with you, Richard, and having you on as a sponsor. I did want to mention one more time, anchor.fm/the H1B Guy for my podcast that I'm launching. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the H1BGuy.com. At the end of the month, I'm going to be putting out the very first volume of the H1B Guy Digest. There's a lot going on. I've been interviewed for a podcast. I'm contributing on a new website. So a lot of things happening here in the H1B Guy world. And I can't do it without you. I can't do it without Maddie. I can't do it without Vivek. I can't do it without Dr. Oscar. And I can't do it without Richard. So, gentlemen, thank you for coming on this very first episode. I wanted to keep it to 30 minutes. I think we did it in 40. And so we will work on cutting that down next time. Just make sure, guys, if you see out there Documented Dreamers series, we're going to be February 18th will be the next one for that. And then again, we'll be doing the H1B Guy and Friends live on the last Wednesday of the month. And just go support recruiternetworks.com, support improvethedream.org. And most of all, if you haven't, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. But most of all, if you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching my content. And thank you for allowing me to bring my passion to you. But most of all, to you four gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Anytime.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So with that being said, The H1B Guy, your global source for all things H1B.
Hi, buddy.